Wake up, get up there. Raise your voice, I guess like yours.
Hello friends, and welcome to Figure Study, where we are appreciating the style of Sentai, and what style it is. Today we are taking a look at Lupin Kaiser from Lupinranger vs. Patranger, which is the, as I understand it, newest Super Sentai series going on in Japan that's like cops versus thieves, and I haven't watched any of it. I've seen some of the pictures. I think the costumes look pretty cool. I like the distinction between the two teams and how the Lupinrangers, their helmets look like top hats, and the Patrangers, their helmets look like police hats / badges. It's a neat idea. Anyway, we will be taking a look at Lupin Kaiser, but not the basic Lupin Kaiser, because to be quite honest, I have no interest in any kind of Super Sentai stuff that involves collecting multiple little bits that you just kind of have to pick and choose what goes on the finished robot. Like, unless you can incorporate all of it into one big mode, I'm not into getting all the things. Especially because, to be quite frank, my money could be used for a lot of other more complete things. That said, I have no problem with getting my hands on the components that I personally like and think would make the neatest looking mech. So, we're actually going to be doing, I guess it's Lupin Kaiser Knight with a little bonus here, which I'll get into in a minute. Yeah, there are a lot of things to go through, and I'm not versed at all in most of this stuff, so I'm probably not going to be giving the names for most of these ships on their own because I just don't know them, and if you're looking at this, you've probably seen plenty of other videos about these where they talk about the individual names. So, sorry if you want me to be thorough, I'm not going to be. Anyway, moving right into it because we do have quite a few to go through. This is some kind of strange promo thing that just came with scissors and blade. I don't know why, but I got this, and I guess this is something I'm lucky to get. I don't know. It is a decent-ish looking ship with these enormous turbines on the sides, engines, which do look cool. And it's got this enormous shiny gold dial on top, which all these have dials on top. It's part of the gimmick, and it's actually really fun. But I'll get into that when I get to the ones that actually do stuff. This is just like a hollow thing that turns. But, yes, it's not bad for what it is. It's, just like two big engines and a cockpit, basically. Just but it's pretty neat. I'm not super into the very, very bright orange. It's okay. Like, I wouldn't have gone out of my way to buy this, but as a freebie, it doesn't bother me too much. I mean, I will say the bright green cockpit actually does work with the orange. It's just, I'm just not a fan of the color scheme in general. Anyway, the way this works is just flies, and then you pull these in, and it becomes a hammer. Pretty simple, but pretty neat. And actually, before I go any further, we'll just go back into vehicle mode real quick, because we need to do the size comparison since we've got everyone here. So as you can see, the mid-sized vehicles are about the same size, maybe a tiny bit bigger than a Power of the Primes Deluxe. And the smaller ones are a little bit smaller, but a little bit bigger than what I'd say is Legend size. Although the Blade Dial Fighter is probably about Legend size. I'll give you put them, yeah, I'd say that's about Legend size. But, it's Super Sentai stuff, so of course it's actually going to be kind of sizey. Comes with the territory. Anyway, yes, moving along, let's get this transformed up. Hammer, there we go. And now moving on to the blue one. I don't know the name of this one, I'm sorry. This one is not bad looking. One thing that's kind of a common issue I have with a lot of these is I just kind of really want to go in there with some panel lining, because you can see there's some really nice texture in there, but when you're looking at it from a distance, it's just sort of primary colors with the bits that are painted that are visible. Anyway, it's not a bad looking plane. It's weird. I get like a biplane vibe from it, even though it's not a biplane. I think if anything, it makes me think of like an older like World War II era plane with like the propeller and the cockpit and wing design. It just kind of, I'm terrible with individual planes, but it just makes me think of like a plane from that era. And it works pretty well, though it's a little strange that it's got a Gatling gun sticking out of its tail end. And of course, you also have the combination dial on top again. And now this is where the gimmick comes into play, and I actually do think this is pretty fun. And it's simple, but if you turn it enough, it just drops down, and then you can angle that forward, and that's like it's I think this is like attack mode or something. And that's kind of weird, but it's fine, and I do think it's kind of fun how you just turn that and it drops down. So to transform this, you turn it and it drops down. Fold down the wings, turn this, and oh look, a fist. And there you go. It is an arm now. Looking at Blade, it's a very simple ship design, but I actually think this is a pretty cool one. The colors work well, where you've got primarily black with like a little bit of grayish or silvery gray, and the orange metallic highlights there. And I really like this metallic blue that they got for the cockpit, and the fact that you actually have these detail lines that are unpainted going through them. That makes the cockpit look just a little bit futuristic, which, I mean, they're all kind of futuristic vehicles, but I don't know. It's a neat little detail. And this one, again, doesn't really do much. But the reason this doesn't do much is because it connects to scissors, and the dial on top of scissors has that little hex thing. So you can see those match up. You plug them together, and now you've got this little piggyback thing, which also looks good together because the colors do complement each other here, where you've got the metallic orange in the bigger wings for scissors, and that same metallic blue for the cockpit section. And then if you turn the dial here, it'll do it'll trigger that thing. So hold that off, put that down for a sec, and getting back to Blade. Again, looks really good, and also a little bit of silver on the tail fins to make those stand out. And it's got a really nice shape. It's a very basic shape, but it does work. The thing that kind of bugs me about this is this is meant to attach to scissors, and it also attaches to the noise-making gun thing that comes with these toys, and I don't like this because it totally interrupts the silhouette of the plane. You don't really notice it when it's plugged into scissors, and when it's in Blade mode, where you just fold these bits up, you can't see it in Blade mode as well, so that is fine with me. And yeah, that becomes a little sword. Pretty neat, pretty simple, but I dig it. And also the hammer thing doesn't have as much of a problem with that because the cockpit is a little bit bigger, and because it's all the same color, it's not as glaringly obvious, at least not to my eyes. Because with Blade, when you open it up, it's this gray outline that really makes that thing stand out. And scissors. This is a neat kind of future-y looking stealth bomber thing, and I am very much into this. I like the shape of this. It kind of reminds me of, again, I forget the name of the plane, but it's like a stealth fighter or something like that, and I like the angles on it. The fact that everything's just kind of, like, there are practically no smooth edges on this thing except for the dial. It's neat. I definitely like the shape of this. And again, lots of nice little details in there. Nice future-y looking cockpit. Nice use of color. It's like the metallic reds, metallic oranges, and the Lupinranger logo, I'm assuming, or possibly a logo for like one of the Rangers. I don't know. I don't watch the show, but still cool. And then you do the thing. That drops down. That swings out. And you pull these out, and now it's a plane flying with a big pair of scissors. And that's goofy, but it's fine. I mean, I didn't get any of these for their individual vehicle modes, really. I just thought the combination was fun, and the end result is pretty cool. So to transform this the rest of the way, we just snap those shut, flip this back, and then turn that. And that will be another arm. Okay, almost done. Now for the red one. I guess it's kind of... it's not the most detailed out of all of them. It's about on par with scissors in terms of like just amount of paint and stuff like that, but it feels like the most detailed one, I think, because it's predominantly red, which allows some of the details that are in there to stand out a little bit more. And you've got like the black on the wings with the orange, and then the black stripe going down around the cockpit area instead of there just being a painted cockpit on the red. So that's nice because that black does definitely separate out that metallic blue a little bit better. And I do like that metallic blue. It's a nice metallic blue that they used on a lot of these cockpits. And then a little bit of black up here, black for the dial with a nice red stripe around the outside. And again, lots of nice detail that really makes me want to panel line this thing, which I might do in the future. It's not a bad future-y looking jet fighter thing. It's vaguely like a smushed up Macross fighter, I think. It's like slightly roundy. And this one, of course, does the thing where you turn the dial and that pops down. And then on the inside, there's this like light thing. I don't know. Again, don't watch the show, but I think that like fires a thing, and yeah. Nice silver bits painted there that are pretty cool. So yeah, that's the attack mode. Anyway, finishing the transformation, gonna fold those up and rotate the head around, and there you can see, I'll just go over the head now, why not? The robot mode face, which does look good, if a little tiny and recessed. I like that they painted the black around the metallic yellow for the eyes. That definitely makes them pop. And of course, the silver always looks nice. Kind of gives a hint of like a, like a thief wearing a mask or something, which I know is kind of the point because Lupin Kaiser. I also really like how the dial sort of becomes a top hat. I'll get into that more when we get into the robot mode, but it's a neat effect. So yeah, there we've got that bit. That off to the side. And now on to this thing, which is kind of a blocky mess, but I think they did what they could with it. It's kind of a refrigerator with some key bits painted and some wings attached to the outside. It doesn't look as terrible as I thought it would, though. I mean, I do like the paintwork that's going on in here, where you've got that nice metallic blue for the cockpit again, with like the white, a little bit of silver for the intakes, and this nice strip of orange with the fighter jet style, or fighter plane style angry face on the front there, going all the way down to that nose cone. Nice red on the wings, which also have lots of nice detail. Actually, again, you can see more nice texture detail in there. And again, kind of want to do panel lining, especially because these sticker bits, you actually have like panel lining in there. So might end up doing that too. I don't know. I think it's interesting too how they did a thing where you fold these up and take the nose cone, fold that back. It sort of hides the face, but like suddenly this jet thing becomes a car thing, and that is the Patranger vehicle. And it's interesting how it's basically like both teams have the same vehicle. It's just like a slightly different thing. Like I don't know how it works in the show, but it's kind of neat. Anyway, to finish this transformation, I'm going to split legs and then push this in, because this is actually a button. So push that in, and that allows you to pull it down, and then it'll lock into place. Do that. Flip that around and flip these panels down, which you can leave these flipped down in vehicle mode. It doesn't get in the way of the wheels or anything, but I prefer to flip them up when I transform it because it's just one extra step that I can take when doing this. So do that, and this bit here with the dial and the trigger, which works for gimmicks for both the triggers for the Patrangers, dials for the Lupinrangers. It's got electronics and it makes noises, but the noises are annoying, and forget that. So I'm just gonna fold that down, and there's a little recess here for the dial. So that was well thought out. And then flip that up, and there we have an armless, need to readjust. And there we have an armless and headless Sentai mech body thing. So at this point, all that's left is to slap the various pieces on. And here we have Lupin Kaiser Knight all combined up, and I actually really like this. I was kind of on the fence for a little while over getting the Lupin Kaiser or Pat Kaiser version of this robot, because like I like the colors and the boxier shape of the Pat Kaiser mecha, and I wasn't necessarily feeling Lupin Kaiser that much. But then when I saw the scissors and blade combination that basically gives him a pretty nifty sword and shield thing going here. Once I saw that, I was kind of like, okay, I think I'm going to get that. And we will get to the hammer in a minute, but yeah, this looks really cool. I really like this. There's a lot here that works. In this configuration, it's interesting too, like the colors are pretty much like they all kind of work together across the board except for the blue arm, but that doesn't really bother me. And I actually think it's kind of interesting how you've got a fairly cohesive color scheme all throughout the entire body except for the one arm. Now, the scissors vehicle does make for a really cool shield. I just like the overall shape of it and the colors. And I think it's neat how that armature kind of becomes the new arm with this big old spike sticking up from the shoulder there. It's a neat effect, and they even molded molded fingers onto it, and that's really cool. I do like that a lot. And another reason why I actually decided to go with this, because I was thinking I could get Pat Kaiser and then get the scissors and blade dial fighters to go with it. The one thing is I wanted it to be cohesive for all dial fighters, because I know you can mix and match, but I feel like it's more appealing visually to have that one specific design element kind of going throughout each piece of the robot. The other reason is because if you look at Lupin Kaiser's head, so if you look at Lupin Kaiser's head, you can see he's got this kind of shape going where he's got the two wings that sweep up and then the two smaller wings on the inside. That shape is actually slightly mimicked in the shield, which ties all of this together, where you've got the two wings and then the two tinier wings. And that's just an interesting design element that I'm pretty sure had to be intentional, because again, the angle's a little bit different for Lupin Kaiser's head, but the silhouette, if you just look at that, it's very close. So in a way, it's kind of got this ornate shield of his head. And then you've got the sword, which does look pretty cool. Now, getting back to the head, I really like how they went with sort of a classic thief look for this, like how you've got the eye mask and the top hat, and it's a really interesting design. Again, I think it's cool that they use the little dial for a top hat. He does not look amused, but it works, I think, really well for what they were going for. There's something about that classic thief design that I think they actually managed to capture relatively well in a giant combining robot. And one other thing that I just thought was really, really funny with regards to Lupin Kaiser is the fact that it's a team of thieves, Super Sentai, but it's a team of thieves with a giant robot that has a thief mask, kind of wearing a top hat, and has a very predominantly red and black color scheme, which does work really well, plus the little bits of silver here and there, but it's a predominantly red and black color scheme. It reminds me of something. You may know where I'm going with this, you probably do. But yeah, this totally makes me think of what it might be like if the Phantom Thieves from Persona 5 had their own giant robot. And I can't not think of it that way anymore, and I kind of love it, and I kind of would love to see something like that happen. Still, I think it'd be cool. It gave me a cool mental image. So, with that out of the way, the hammer. Now, there are a couple of different things that I've tried to do with this, because I don't like leaving leftover parts. A part of me has considered selling the hammer, but I kind of decided I wanted to keep it after a while, because there's a certain configuration that I do that I think actually looks pretty cool. One thing that kind of works is if you take the hammer and spread these out part way, there's actually sort of a soft lock point between all the way back and all the way forward. It kind of settles into place right there. So leaving it like that, you can clip it on here, and then he gets a slightly more ornate shield. And that doesn't look bad. I mean, you can flip these all the way up. It works either way. But personally, I kind of like having it flipped down a bit, because then this kind of follows the line of the wing and just kind of looks a bit more intentionally ornamental. Plus, this adds a little bit more color variation to that side. So now you've got blue there that's nowhere else and orange there that's nowhere else. So color-wise, it kind of balances it a little better by slightly imbalancing it. But there is my favorite thing to do with this, and that requires moving this and turning it back into a hammer, and then taking the sword out of his hand and bring this a little closer so I don't have to reach as far. And clip this in. And the reason I like to clip this in is both because it doesn't waste parts and because without it, you've got this kind of, like there's detail in this section right here, but it kind of looks like a void because since it's so dark, it's hard to make out that detail. So by plugging this back in, but keeping it in the blade mode, it adds a little bit more detail to that shield. And now you have this nice grayish silver line going down the middle there. So that adds some more visual interest to the shield. And now you could just plug the hammer in and be done, and that looks fine. But what I actually found you can do is if you flip the hand up, it takes a little bit of imagination here because it's going to look a little bit weird, but at a glance it looks cool. So if you flip the hand up until it clicks into that spot where it's up 90 degrees, then you can plug the hammer into the bottom of the fist. And then by bringing the arm down and rotating it a bit, now, if you didn't know he was holding onto it with the bottom of his fist, it actually kind of looks like he's got his fist tilted like this and he's holding the hammer out like that, or that the hammer is a fist. And that looks really cool to me. I really like that. The colors are a bit strangely distributed when it's like this because you've got that orange and blue, like all of the outlier colors are on one side and then everything else is red, black, and gray, or silver. But I still think it kind of works. And yeah, I really, I ended up really liking this, which is funny because when I first saw the videos for the Lupin Kaiser and Pat Kaiser, I was kind of like, yeah, kind of wishy-washy on the whole thing. And then I started seeing videos for Scissors and Blade and was like, okay, that's a cool combination. I think I'm going to do it. And then I did it. And yeah, it's great. Size comparisons. Almost forgot about size comparisons. So here you've got Pat Kaiser with a Titan's Return Deluxe, and yeah, it's, Megazord size, I guess. Although bigger than I thought he was going to be. For some reason, I thought that this was actually going to be a little bit smaller, because that's kind of how the Sentai mechs have been going lately with like the Zyuohger stuff and all that. But no, he's actually a decent size. I was not expecting him to be as big as he is. Not that he's huge, just bigger than I expected. Case in point, Lupin Kaiser is pretty much the same height as the Shogun Megazord, which is pretty much my go-to default for Sentai mech size. So yeah, he ain't no slouch. Alright, so that is pretty much it for my look at Lupin Kaiser, but I do want to do one thing real quick because I heard people talking about this in videos, but I never really saw anyone actually showing it off. So just to verify for everyone who might be curious, you can actually use any arm on any side. And that includes scissors and blade here. So pop scissors off, pop this guy off. Come on, there we go. And now we can totally, if we want, turn it around, peg it on there. And for scissors, you just take this bit, which that's where the peg is, and you just rotate it around and attach it. And there you go. Now he's got the shield on his right arm and the other arm there. The problem with this is you get the screw holes, but still, it's a thing you can do. This was a thing that I just wasn't entirely sure of when I first got scissors, and I'm glad that it totally can be done. I just hadn't seen anyone actually showing it off. Okay, so now I'm done talking about Lupin Kaiser, and yeah, this is a really, really cool set. I know there are a lot more vehicles, and there's also Pat Kaiser, but I don't want to spend what funds I have on toy acquisitions on getting 2 different mecha from the same line and all the little interchangeable parts that will undoubtedly end with me leaving some parts off to the side as vehicles, because I don't like that. I want to have everything incorporated into one robot mode. I know supposedly there's going to be something that comes along that allows the Patrangers and Lupinrangers to combine into one big robot, and I'm curious about that, but I'm reserving judgment until I actually see it. And I'm not into this enough to preemptively start buying that stuff. So, like, for now, this is plenty for me. I think this looks really cool. But that is enough about what I think about this thing. What do you all think? Any of you Sentai fans out there been watching the show? Any of you started getting your hands on the toys? When it comes to the mecha, do you prefer Lupin Kaiser or Pat Kaiser? Because I can totally see the reasoning for both. I think the trigger machine gimmick is pretty neat on its own, but I kind of prefer the dial fighter one. It's just something about, like, the tactile nature of turning the dial and just feeling that click once you get to that one point. It's weirdly pleasing. And what do you all think in terms of the simplicity of this? Because I know some people have taken issue with how everything transforms in this line, saying it's a little bit too simple. I think people may have said the same thing about Q-Ranger. I don't remember. That was kind of a deterrent for me, but then I stopped and thought about it, and there are actually a number of Power Rangers or Super Sentai mecha that have very simple transformations. Like the Delta Squad Megazord, with the exception of the, whatever it's called, the car that makes up the torso. The other transformations for those vehicles to go into the combined robot mode are actually really simple. It's like flip a fist out, flip a fist out, flip the truck thing up to make a foot. Really, the simplicity thing isn't that new to Super Sentai or Power Rangers. I mean, yes, with Zyuohger, things were simple, but they could do multiple things at once. Like, you had the cubes, but then they could turn into animals, and the animals could, like, stack to make robots. But in the grand scheme of things, I feel like the transformations for the Lupinranger versus Patranger stuff, they're not any less complicated than some of the less complicated stuff that's come in the past, so I've kind of gotten over it. And with regards to either Lupin Kaiser or Pat Kaiser, is there a particular combination that you prefer? Like in terms of limbs and stuff like that? Whatever your thoughts, please feel free to chime in down below. I do always enjoy hearing from you all. And while you're at it, also feel free to like or subscribe. Any of those things would make me a happy Rob. And remember, art is more than meets the eye, if you ever see it coming.